PowerPoint. Okay, is the PowerPoint up with everybody? The Powys Professional Learning team? Could somebody just say yes or no?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Right, okay. So, right, okay, I'm a part of the Powys Professional Learning team, the professional learning team to move pedagogy on here in Powys then and develop and prepare ourselves for the new curriculum then. These are the members of the team then, so if you want to jot down the email addresses and contact us individually, service manager in charge of us all then, and keeping us in order is Sally Llewellyn, and that's her email address. The lead for digital then is Rob Walters. The lead for 14 plus is myself. The lead for professional pathways is Sarah Purdue. The lead for well-being and equalities then are Mary Strong and Christopher Davis then. Also, we encourage you to follow us on Twitter, so all the information will be going up on Twitter as well then. No information for myself will be going up on Twitter because I don't tweet. I just pass to Rob Walters and he puts it up on my behalf. And also then we'll have a website. The website is now up and running. Powys PL offer then. So that's the information as regards professional development. This is the first PL offer that we offer in schools then, and it's going to continue on a 2-weekly basis, and in between hopefully we'll get Welsh medium versions as well then. So develop pedagogy and curriculum development. So this is the first one, and I don't know why they've started with me. This could be going out in a blaze of glory, and they sort of pull it after this. But anyway, here we go then. With the curriculum then, my aim today then is I sent this out to most heads, and I asked them to send the most negative people out there who really weren't interested in the new curriculum and really didn't want change. And very often, you know, you see the word change and, you know, changing. And yeah, you know, a lot of people really, oh yes, you know, and grasp it with 2 hands. But there's also then a great deal of negativity. Why do we need change? Why do we need to develop a new curriculum? And it comes down to maybe the work of Simon Sinek. Simon Sinek then has written a great deal of start with why. Why do we need something? Very often in education, people pass on things to us and say that, you know, you need to run with this then. But if you don't understand why, you're not going to buy into it. So the idea behind this presentation then, a lot of my colleagues and a lot of people I've talked with then say, why have we got this new curriculum? And you've changed. And the idea of me changing is the fact that I was so, you know, I didn't want this curriculum at the start. But, you know, the idea of why, and that's what I'm going to try and teach you, well, try and go over with you today then, is the idea of why have we got a new curriculum? And offer opportunity maybe to delve deeper and to linger longer. Oh, that's good, isn't it? So why have a new curriculum? Well, one of the things that's happened in education, and, you know, for somebody who's taught for over 25 years in the classroom then, there's a massive amount of change that's occurred very recently in education, especially in secondary schools then. If going back 6-7 years ago, there was a new A level. I was a head of history and there's a new history A level, which was a real nightmare because you had to develop new areas of study and so on then. Then, of course, GCSE changed. And that was another nightmare on top of that then. So we had to change A level and GCSE. And all of a sudden now, Key Stage 3, the old Key Stage 3, has to change then. We're continuously changing. And there's a lot of fatigue out there. Certainly with COVID, a huge amount of work the teachers have put in with COVID. And facing a new curriculum upon everything else is just another element of change. So why do we need change? Well, let's take a look at maybe the words of Graham Donaldson. And the Graham Donaldson maybe started the ball rolling with all this then, with his successful futures then. Our children and young people have a relatively short time at school. We must use that time wisely and productively to help them grow as confident, healthy, fulfilled individuals who can thrive in the face of unknown future challenges. And you can say, yeah, that's sort of a rosy picture of education and change and everything like that. But it's so true when you really delve into it, you know, how quick pupils actually pass through schools with us, you know. If you're in the primary school, they start and then they're in year 6 almost by the time you've turned around. Equally then in secondary schools, they start with us in year 7 and they're in year 13. And as a parent myself, I see my own children, you know, my daughter left this year to start in Cardiff University. My son is in year 10. It was almost, you know, a few years ago where they were starting in school. They pass through so quickly then. So we must use that time wisely and productively. We must ensure that the best education system for those pupils going through the system then. Also then, if you look at the mental health in Wales, we're not leading the world as regards this. These to me are the most scary statistics I've ever come across. 1 in 10 children in Wales have mental health problems. Half of all mental health problems have begun by the age of 14. Suicide is the most common cause of death for boys aged 5 to 19 and the second most common for girls at this age. 1 in 10 young people self-harm at some point in their lives, although there is evidence that this could be much higher. Girls are far more likely to self-harm than boys. And yes, those are scary statistics, but as somebody who's been to the funerals of 2 pupils that have committed suicide, they're even scary and they even bring it home to me personally then. And I think we need to change. And what's really, really encouraging to me as regards the new curriculum is that health and well-being are an AOLE all unto themselves. It's so, so vitally important. If we get this wrong, and we are getting it wrong at the moment, things need to change and things need to develop and move on then. And the new curriculum offers us an opportunity, an amazing opportunity to really, really grasp this and run with it. Another aspect then is academically. Are we succeeding academically here in Wales? Well, if you look at the PISA results, and I know everything's not driven by PISA results and the results, but one thing that it does outline is the fact that we are not succeeding internationally then. Wales is not by far the most successful country in the world as regards education. Also then, when we look at our own curriculum here in Wales, our present curriculum was first introduced way back in 1988. 1988, that's when we had a new curriculum here in Wales then. There's been a lot of small changes and adaptations to the curriculum, but our curriculum really goes back to 1988. It was a very, very different world. The world, and some of you might be even here saying I wasn't even alive then back in 1988. These are the sort of films we were watching. This is the music we were listening to, Prince and Tracy Chapman and Madonna. This woman was in power, and I'm not even going to say anything more about her. And even Donald Trump. Donald Trump was still nuts, but he was a younger nuts person. And as well as that then, the World Wide Web. Yes, the World Wide Web existed, but it wasn't really a part of our lives, didn't really exist within the curriculum in 1988, wasn't even considered as a part of that curriculum then. Also then global warming, certainly global warming was happening in 1988, but was it included within the curriculum? No, because we weren't really aware, wasn't really a part of our conscious thought during that period. And me, myself, where was I? Well, I was still in school. I was in the 6th form at Maes Erwen School here in Powys then. So all those encourage us to the idea that maybe our curriculum is slightly dated, it's slightly out of date, it's not relevant to the world that we're currently living in. But one of the things, and this is, you might have heard me say this story before, but this is what's known by my colleagues used to say, I used to work with in Eru as, oh, this is a Donaldson story, but it is a Donaldson story. And I reflect upon this story as where a lot of teachers are at the moment. I came into the process 4 years ago. And the first meeting was held in Llandudno then, in Fenyw Cymru in Llandudno, where over 200 teachers throughout Wales then met and to start the process of creating a new curriculum in Wales then. Graham Donaldson was on the stage and Graham Donaldson spoke, and he'd just launched Successful Futures, which is the blueprint, of course, for the new curriculum. And he spoke as regards Successful Futures and everything. And I was there and I attended the meeting. I attended it with my deputy head. And my deputy head is very similar to myself. That he's got a devilish streak inside him. And he said to me, ask him the question, ask him the question. And he said, what? I said, I'll buy you a pint if you ask him the question. And I said, okay. And the question I asked, I put my hand up in front of 200 people at the end, and I said, what happens to history and what happens to GCSE? And that question I still get asked today when I present on the curriculum. What happens to history and what happens to GCSE? Asking the question, I was fairly confident in asking the question. As regards history, I taught history for 25 years. And I didn't want to change history. History was my subject, and I didn't want to teach this nonsense they call humanities or social studies or whatever it was then, social sciences and so on. Also then, the GCSE, I was confident in asking the GCSE because I was a part of writing the new GCSE. It had just been launched and it had just come out then. And what happened with the GCSE, it'd been refused because they needed more Welsh history. So WJC asked me to come in, can you include more Welsh history within the new GCSE? And I added more Welsh history. It was refused again, and I added some more. I was quite happy it was refused, by the way. And I added more, and it was finally passed then. But looking back at my opinions at that time, which is the opinions that remain within a lot of people, a lot of teachers here in Wales then, why have I changed? Well, as regards history and history itself then, I looked at what other countries were doing. What was the other countries were leading in education then? So you're looking at countries, for instance, such as New Zealand, such as British Columbia, such as Finland, and so on, were teaching humanities or social studies, social sciences then. And I was looking at what I was teaching in A-level, and A-level history to me was basically, I was asking the pupils why did something happen in history? And we've given them the acronym PESCA. And what PESCA stood for was you need to consider issues such as political, economic, social, cultural, religious, geography. All these factors influence why something happened in history. And what are they actually? They're all humanities. They're all based on the human experience. So although I was teaching A-level history, I was actually teaching humanities, in fact. As regards GCSE, why has my opinion changed as regards GCSE, despite writing the papers themselves? Well, my daughter was the first cohort and the only cohort so far to have actually sat the GCSE history examination. And my daughter turned to me and she said, Dad, I had to learn so much content for GCSE history. I had to learn more content for GCSE history than any other GCSE. And you're the diawl bach. You're the little devil that wrote the damn thing in the first place. And I said, yeah. And looking back at that GCSE, the current GCSE, I can't criticise it. It is driven by content. We ask our pupils to learn so much content. I think it's a terrible exam. And I can say that because I was a part of writing that exam itself then. We need to change. We need to adapt. We need to look at what's happening in other countries. We need to question what we're currently teaching. This is another aspect that I look upon. We need to question what we're actually teaching. If I was with you, I'd ask you to consider this then, and to consider what you're teaching currently, and do we need to change that then? But because I'm doing it through the internet then, I came up with a list of subjects that I was taught when I was in my South Erwin school. Yeah, and over 30 years ago then, when I left. And these are some of the stuff that I learned. The Carnival of Animals, Jack the Ripper, the Titanic, and I actually taught those myself. Reactions in a blast furnace, Oxbow Lakes, algebra. And if you really, really want to lose a few hours of your life by doing something totally and utterly pointless, I encourage you to read Triedman Cyffion by Kate Roberts, the most depressing book ever written, I'd argue. But have they helped me? Have they helped me succeed? Have they pushed me forward by teaching, by being taught all these? Have they helped me in life? You know, I can think of Oxbow Lakes, other than passing maybe a river and seeing an Oxbow Lake and turning into somebody and saying, oh, look at that, that's an Oxbow Lake. It's not going to help me. And it hasn't helped me on my journey through life there. And these ideas are encapsulated by the work of Dr. Alan Collins then, who wrote a book then, What's Worth Teaching? They are not powerful ideas. They are not going to help you navigate through the world you're entering. Currently in schools, we mainly test for recall of facts, which narrows the curriculum. But the world is changing and our schools need to catch up. Routine jobs are disappearing, therefore we need to teach our pupils to be more independent as critical and creative thinkers who are able to manage time and work with others. He encourages us to look and to question what we actually teach. Very often in schools then, and continue today then, knowledge is power. The idea of knowledge is power. We ask our pupils to learn massive chunks of information. And certainly in the past, that was correct. You know, knowledge is power. But things have really, really changed, in my opinion, then. And this is one of my favourite quotes then. The idea that knowing the capital city of Belgium is no longer important once the iPhone knew the answer. We can get the knowledge, we can just pick our phones up and we can gather that knowledge. And it's vitally important that we understand that knowledge is no longer power. Yes, we still need knowledge. I'm not moving away from the fact we don't need knowledge. We still need knowledge to teach our young people. But putting too much emphasis on knowledge is maybe we should be moving away from that. And that's my criticism of the GCSE history. And this is what Graham Donaldson says about this then. The curriculum moves from a coverage-based curriculum to one that's driven by a strong sense of purpose, the 4 purposes. The coverage curriculum doesn't work because we simply add more and more and more. If you think of the curriculum that came out in 1988, there has been a lot of changes, but the changes that have been are just simply adding more and more content. The new curriculum is far more aspirational, in my opinion. What do we need to create here in Wales? What do we want our learners to do once they leave school at 16? Do we want them to be, robots that have learned a massive amount of facts? No, the new curriculum encourages us to create learners that are ambitious, capable learners, enterprising, creative contributors, healthy, confident individuals, ethically informed citizens. Yes, Bob back, these are, huge aspirations. I'd argue, yes, but don't we owe it to our learners to reach for the stars? And this is what the new curriculum offers us. We don't want to create robots here in Wales. We want to create the 4 purposes driven curriculum here in Wales then. Welsh Assembly Government have created a lot of documents. There's a great deal of amount of documents that have been created out there. And a lot of it is, I don't know, criticise it because somebody might be watching this video, but one of the best documents they've created is misconceptions. And I really encourage you, if you get an opportunity, I think there's 2 parts of it. There's the first and the second part. And the misconceptions really open your eyes to many of the myths that are surrounded the new curriculum. For example, the first one, Curriculum for Wales 2022 is a new national curriculum. Well, yes or no? Well, it's not actually. It's not a national curriculum. What you have then is a framework. And it's a framework for you to build your curriculum upon. Upon that framework. What I've seen with a lot of schools recently is they sort of, they go after themes, maybe they go after new ideas, which is really, really positive. And I don't want to over-criticize that, but they don't use the framework. And it's really, really important that we go back and really look at the framework. And upon that very solid framework, we can build our new curriculum upon. It's not a national curriculum. It's a national framework, but upon that, we build our curriculums for our schools. The new curriculum is a skills curriculum, and this is, an old argument that, puts more emphasis on skills. Yes, skills are very, very important within the new curriculum, but we still need the content. Although I criticize content, and I said the iPhone as the answer and so on, that we still need the content. We still need that, but it is also far, far more evidence and skills. If we look at the humanities, which is my field, then the first 2 are skills in the what matter statements, I should say. The first 2 are skills. The next 2 then are content, and the final one, the 5th one, is the most exciting one in my opinion, is an action. We want our pupils to take more action, to create a more active role within society. The new curriculum should be learner-led, and a lot of schools have gone down this line, but it can't be really, because it's the unknown unknowns. The pupils don't know what they should be taught. It should be led by the teaching profession, by us as teachers themselves then. The next one then, all of what matter statements should be addressed in every lesson. Well, there are 27 of them. I'd absolutely love to just see that lesson where 27 what matter statements can be covered in a single lesson. It's impossible in my opinion then. But I'd really encourage you to go onto the website then, in Huw then, and to look at the misconceptions. Because in my opinion, the misconceptions very, very often open our eyes to a lot of what the new curriculum is all about then. So I've discussed a lot in Wales then, but curriculum change is not just happening here in Wales then. Graham Donaldson himself argued almost every country, I repeat that, in the world is currently engaged in some quite radical thinking as regards how and what we teach our young people. Arguably the only country currently not engaged on a national basis, and the emphasis is a national basis upon curriculum change at the moment, is England. And we very often look automatically towards what's happening in England. But I want you to look outwards at what's happening around the world. Of course, if England were leading internationally and were a massive success as regards their education, then I'd encourage you to look at England, but they're not. So we should look at the world, and that's what the new curriculum encourages us. What's happening throughout the world? What's happening as regards education? And if we look at some of the countries, one of the countries that is certainly leading academically is Singapore. But even Singapore then does not want to be complacent. Singapore believes that their education and pupils lack creativity. Consider, they're right up the top of the PISA results, but even Singapore looks towards curriculum change. And to me, one of the most powerful quotes that I found then is a man named, and I hate the surname because I've said it a few times, it's Tharman Shanmugatnam, who's the Deputy Prime Minister of Singapore. And these are his words as regards the curriculum and the way he views education. Yours is a talent meritocracy. This is him looking at Britain. This is looking at what's happening over here then, basically, in general terms. Yours is a talent meritocracy. Ours is an exam meritocracy. So we seek succeeding in exams, he emphasizes. There are some parts of the intellect that we are not able to test well, like creativity, curiosity, a sense of adventure and ambition. Most of all, you have a culture that challenges conventional wisdom, even if it means challenging authority. These are the areas where Singapore must learn from you. And to me, you read that, creativity, curiosity. We're leading in creativity, curiosity, challenging conventional wisdom. Well, there's a tendency when we live in this country, we don't actually see ourselves as leaders as regards those fields. But as regards maybe Singapore, he definitely views us in that sort of way then. So they're questioning change and encouraging change and looking at their weaknesses. Similarly then, Japan, one of the people that have worked with Japan then in developing their new curriculum is Graham Donaldson himself then. Once again, achieving very, very high academic results, but still questioning its curriculum. And its new curriculum is an emphasis on the zest for life, it's called that. And basically one of the problems with Japan then is the fact that their pupils have faced a great deal of academic pressure then, and the suicide rates are even higher in Japan then, because equally then with Korea and so on then, the pressures that are being placed on young people and the burnout that comes as regards that then is horrendous sort of thing. So Japan have said, whoa, we need to change. What we're actually doing or what we're doing for our young people is not actually working. We need to re-look at this then. Equally then, throughout the world there are changes. British Columbia, these are the countries that, as regards developing the curriculum here in Wales that we've looked at then, have helped us in developing our curriculum. British Columbia, Quebec, Scotland, Ireland, Finland, New Zealand, and Australia. And one of the things, if you look at some of these countries then, if you look at Finland, for example, Finland places an emphasis on the importance of the teaching profession. It gives them basically trusts in their teaching profession to develop their curriculum, to move students forward then. And that's one of the massive successes of the Finland curriculum then. Australia similarly then places a great deal of emphasis on the importance of the profession and trusts in their teachers. I'll come back to Australia and a question that really arose by meeting somebody from Australia later. The curriculum for Wales then, this is the words of the OECD. The world is watching Wales. The Organisation for Cooperation and Development, an intergovernmental economic organisation, measures and analyses education throughout the world. They're responsible, of course, for the Programme for International Assessment. We don't actually call it the Programme for International Assessment, we call it the PISA test then. Wales is the country in the world that has allowed its curriculum to be written by teachers, the first country in the world where the curriculum itself has been written by teachers themselves then. Graham Donaldson in fact says, Wales is one of the countries that is in the forefront of educational change. We're at the forefront of curriculum change with this new curriculum here in Wales then. And this is what the international organisation, the OECD, says. These are the positives that they view as the curriculum development so far here in Wales. They're moving towards a purpose-based curriculum. The higher aspirations that I've emphasised through the 4 purposes then. There's a clear what matters, for each AOLE, there's a clear where we want them to focus. There's a direct engagement of the teaching profession then. And it melts in nicely with Finland basically, because ultimately, if we've written the curriculum, the teaching profession have written the curriculum, and we've been given a free hand really to base our curriculum in our schools upon the framework that's been created, what are the Welsh Assembly Government actually doing by all this? Well, they're actually saying that nobody knows your pupils more than you. Nobody knows your community, your Cynefin, more than you. And nobody knows education more than the teaching profession. Therefore, you should be responsible for creating your curriculum for your learners. And that's a massive change. And of course, it's a massive challenge for us here. We need to grasp this opportunity that's been given to us. It's a whole change of mindset to a certain extent. And there are challenges in education. So what's behind all this curriculum change that's happening throughout the world? There are massive arguments in education throughout the world, massive arguments that are occurring then. So I'll just highlight some of these arguments then that's actually occurring then. It's the modern knowledge versus traditional knowledge. Modern knowledge then, subjects such as robotics, entrepreneurship, coding, media, communication, all these are really, really exciting modern knowledge. But of course, there's the argument then, well, whoa, now we shouldn't be moving away from traditional subjects. We need to emphasize the importance of reading, maths and languages are still fundamentally important. So what should we do? We should be just piling more and more information in, or should we be staying towards the traditional subjects then? Equally then, there's an argument going on in education as regards depth versus breadth. Depth then, there's a danger. As we move away from traditional subjects, the depth and expertise in subject knowledge will be lost. How many times have I heard that argument? Every time I go into an AOLE, I get, oh, you know, there's a massive danger that we'll be moving away from the depth of knowledge as regards whatever subject they're actually teaching them. There's the breadth then. We need to ensure that pupils get an overview and a high level of broad understanding of the knowledge landscape. Students should be encouraged to make connections across topics. One of the people that have worked on the new curriculum with us then is an academic named Mark Priestley then. And he argues that very, very often in schools, we don't see the big picture. By simply just looking at it through the perspective of subjects, we don't see the big picture. So by looking at this rock, to truly understand this and the subjects, we really need to see it in its context, in its broader picture. I really love that picture by Mark Priestley. I'd have loved, by the way, if we could even take it further away then and look at the lake in even a smaller context, or even a world then. It's maybe something for me to do in the future. Also then, I developed a look at this because I think this is one of the major challenges for secondaries, developing a holistic curriculum. And how do we go about developing a holistic curriculum? And I've created a presentation on this. It's far funnier than this, by the way. This is far more serious. My views on the holistic curriculum are far more wacky. Well, they're not wacky. They're not wacky ideas, but they're far more tongue-in-cheek, but really poking fun at what we're currently doing in schools then. You also get arguments in education as regards STEM versus humanities. STEM, of course, and I can see my father-in-law, I can hear my father-in-law who's a chemistry teacher, then a head of chemistry. We need, in the world, is more science, technology, engineering and maths graduates in order to fill the huge demand for jobs. You know, we need to move away from this humanities and liberal arts and everything. But humanities then, of course, you know, and being in humanities or expressive arts then, curriculums can develop many of the skills required for success in a wide variety of careers. Critical thinking and creativity, for example, then. And arguably one of the, greatest minds, scientific minds, Steve Jobs, agrees to a certain extent with that then. Technology alone is not enough, he argues. It's technology married with liberal arts, married with humanities, that yield the results that make our hearts sing. How often, and this is a question maybe you want to consider, how often do we give our learners the opportunity to make their hearts sing? Are we just teaching them knowledge and feeding them knowledge, or are we allowing them the opportunities to make their hearts sing? Another workshop that I've done, and it's mostly a whole day workshop then, is on creativity. And me personally then, it blew my mind. I looked at what was out there as regards creativity, and very often we see creativity just as something for the expressive arts. It's just for that lot, but it's not. And what's out there then is creativity is vitally important for every AOLE. And we need to look and develop creativity in science and maths, in science and tech, in maths, in humanities, in languages, in everywhere we need to develop creativity. And it's vitally important that we look upon those areas. Also, then you could argue there's a massive argument going along between knowledge versus skills, which I discussed earlier, character, meta-learning. These are the terms, of course, made by the OECD, unfortunately. So character probably for us means purpose then. Meta-learning is simply learning to learn. So encouraging our pupils to become reflective, self-directed and expert learners. COVID certainly has moved us along a great way within this field then. Learning to learn. My son, for example, hates school, by the way, but he uses YouTubes to really uncover really in-depth knowledge by looking at YouTube and looking at videos. I knew my coughing would go. By looking at those aspects. Me personally then, one of my biggest weaknesses is IT. I'm not very good in IT, full stop. And I started work with Aero. What happened with Aero very often is everybody is really, really good in IT then. So one of the things that came out at the start of lockdown was Adobe Spark. And I said, right, I'll become an expert in Adobe Spark. And there's loads of videos out there of stuff to do with Adobe Spark then. And I became an ish expert. I succeeded in making videos, and I did a video on Canadian, for example, and I knew my voice was going to go. Sorry. So we need to look, as I said, on different viewpoints, look at developing knowledge, look at developing skills, look at developing purposes and meta-learning them. Also then a big argument that's happening at the moment then is formative versus summative assessment. Summative assessment tests, of course, at the end of learning. Formative assessment monitors students' learning is an ongoing process then. But if we actually look at what assessment is, the word assessment comes from the Latin word assidere, and assidere simply means sit beside. And in education, maybe we've lost that focus. Very often we are driven by data and statistics and so on, and over the last 20 years we are driven by that. Has it really worked here in Wales? I'd say no, and I'm really struggling at the moment. I'd say no. If you take 30 books back to mark in a night or over a weekend, if you sat by that pupil for a few minutes, I'd argue that you'd get to know that pupil and where his level was at far, far better than just taking a set of books home and to mark those books. We are very aware in schools now that we are emphasis on assessment for learning or learning for assessment. Unfortunately, we still put an emphasis on learning for assessment. And I can see that come out clearly once I talk about the new curriculum. And a lot of secondary schools, what they argue then is, right, great, this new curriculum, fine, positive or whatever, but what happens to GCSE? And they're not willing to adopt a lot of these ideas until they find out what's happening to GCSE. I can tell you straight what's going to happen to GCSE. It will change. It will have to change. And why will it change? Well, it will change because the new curriculum is a 3 to 16. It's law at the moment. I hope you can appreciate how much I'm struggling at the moment. It's law at the moment. It'll have to change. And what really opened my mind to GCSE and what really changed my opinion, and it was a penny drop moment to me then, was meeting a colleague from Australia. The Welsh Assembly government had asked, they had somebody visit him from Australia then. She was travelling throughout the world, basically, looking at the education system. She'd visited Finland, she'd visited France, Scotland, Ireland, and she was going to go out to the United States and Canada. She visited Wales and she was a historian, and she also wanted to see what the teaching was like in small rural communities. So the Welsh Assembly government contacted me and asked, could I take her around then? I said, fine. So I took her to a lot of schools then for 2 days then around the Aero region then. And what happened, once we were driving around, she turned to me one day and she knew the answer. And she said, what happens at GCSE with you then? And I said, well, how do you assess them? They said, well, at GCSE in Wales then, what we simply do, there's 3 exams and coursework. And coursework counts for 22-25% of the final grade. And there are 3 exams. And how long are the exams, she asked. Each exam is an hour long, I said. And she said, okay. So 3 exams, and 3 hours long. So that's a mornings, ne? I said, well, it's spread over, but it's simply a mornings, ne? And I said, yes, I never thought of it like that. I said, so you assess something like 75 to 80% of their final grade in one morning. Isn't that bonkers, she said. And I said, yeah, I've never thought of it like that, but it is bonkers. We measure our pupils for 2 years' work in one morning. I said, what do you do in Australia? Well, it's over the 2-year period then. There is an exam at the end, but the exam simply counts for 20 to 25% of the final grade. 75% on teacher assessment throughout that 2-year period then. And it was it really changed my view. And she turned to me, and this is where it comes back to what I argued earlier then. She said, it's almost as if the government doesn't actually trust you as a teaching profession. And I said, yeah, I suppose it does. And it was a penny drop moment. And I think COVID have opened our eyes to there is a need for change. We have maybe placed too much emphasis. I'm not against summative assessment. I'm not against examinations, but are we putting too much emphasis upon it? Also with the new curriculum then, emphasis the argument on global versus local then. And with the new curriculum, and to me, his favourite word in the new curriculum then is Cynefin Story of Wales. It emphasises the importance of us looking at our feet and developing a more localised curriculum, but also a broad perspective as well then. And don't start me on Cynefin, that's for another time. So, okay, Huw, okay. So you've got all these arguments. You've got modern versus traditional, STEM versus humanities, knowledge versus skills versus purposes versus meta learning versus depth versus breadth versus formative assessment, summative assessment, global and local. You've got all those arguments, and all those arguments are out there. So what is the answer? What is the answer? Well, the answer with the new curriculum is a very, very simple one, in my opinion. We need to change the V to an and. We need modern and traditional knowledge. We need STEM and humanities within our curriculums. We need knowledge and skills and purposes and meta learning, depth and breadth, formative assessment and summative assessment, global and local. We need all these. Have we got that at the moment? I think if you went down that list, a lot of them we said, yeah, we've got some of them. Are they balanced? No, I'd argue. I'd argue a lot of them are more balanced towards one more than the other sort of thing. And it's a massive challenge for us here in Wales. We really need to grasp this opportunity. It's an amazing opportunity. And to come back maybe to the words of Mark Priestley. Mark Priestley said there's a massive challenge for us. And this is one of the biggest challenges we face. For me, the biggest issue is teacher autonomy. If a bird has been in a cage for 20 years, it's hardly surprising that if you open the cage, it might not want to come out. We in Wales need to come out of our cages. We need to move away from what we're doing at the moment. The world and our learners really, really want us to change, and we really need to encourage that, because basically what the new curriculum gives us is a freedom. We have this new freedom to change what we're actually doing here in Wales, to improve. We're not succeeding educationally, but we have that opportunity. And to me, one of the most powerful quotes, and it's not describing Wales, it's not specifically to Wales, it's education generally. And these are the words of the OECD. We will need to carefully re-examine the relevance of what we teach, curate the traditional disciplines, add relevant modern disciplines, and place an emphasis on a more holistic learning, not just knowledge, but also skills, character, and meta learning. And the final sentence, and this is the power, and this is really, really emphasizing what I want to see then. Finally, we will need the courage to innovate, letting go of the comfort of an existing system and working under conditions of uncertainty towards a better one. Coming back to the initial question, I've hopefully answered, at least I've tried to answer then, why do we need a new curriculum in Wales? Well, pure and simply, we owe it to our young people, we owe it to the learners in Wales to create the aspiration, to create the high achieving pupils that we hope to create here in Wales. Because at the moment, I'd argue that we're not doing that. Diolch yn fawr i chi gyd. Thank you very much for listening. Hopefully, a lot of the information came across. I'm very, very sorry for my cough. It's my son's fault, and and hopefully if I can cut this out then. Am I back with you? It said bad quality connection. Am I back with you at the moment? No, I'm not. I'm coming back now. Diolch yn fawr chi gyd. Thank you very much for listening. Hopefully you've taken something from what I've said. As I said, I'm willing to stay online. I finished 3 minutes early, so I'm quite on the ball, despite my cough and everything. I've fully recovered now, by the way. So if anybody wants to discuss anything or talk about anything, or really, want to question me about anything, I'd really love somebody to criticize. I love criticism, by the way. So if anybody wants to come back to me and say, I don't quite agree with you with some of the points that you've made, I'd love a bit of that. But the floor is yours, basically. You're either awestruck, which I doubt, or there's nothing to say. Does anybody? I'm stop recording, by the way. If I stop recording, that might open some